Well, in just a minute, you're going to meet the members of KISS face to face, exclusively here on MTV. But first, take a look at this.
When you think of KISS, you think of the makeup, right? You don't need to be a fan of their music or even rock music to know who they are. All you need to see is this, and you instantly know who we're talking about. They curated their image so effectively that the world thinks of the makeup before the music. Of course, it helps that they're also multi-million selling, arena-filling, Hall of Fame megastars. But the KISS image is so permanently imprinted in the public mind that if you Google the word KISS, the band comes up before the, definition of KISS. Seriously, try it. They built an empire on not showcasing their faces. They turned themselves into walking action figures, a literal marketing machine with guitars and face paint. So why on earth would they wipe it all off? Well, let's find out, shall we? Let's wind it back a bit to get an idea of where the makeup came from in the first place. Before they were the KISS we know today, they were just four scrappy blokes in New York trying to make it big, and honestly, they weren't exactly oozing star power in the beginning. Back in '72, Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley were coming off a failed band called Wicked Lester. They had a record deal, but the music was a bit all over the place, and they didn't really gain much traction. They knew it wasn't working, and they wanted something bigger. So they ditched the record deal, binned the rest of the band, and decided to start again. Now first, they responded to an ad that they saw in Rolling Stone. One afternoon, I run across an ad in Rolling Stone magazine that said, "Drummer available, will do anything." I called the guy on the telephone, and even though he was in the middle of a party, he took my call. I introduced myself and said we were starting a band, and that the band was looking for a drummer. And was he willing to do anything to make it? He says that he was, right away. That guy was Peter Criss, and right from the off, Gene had image in mind, and so Peter Criss became their drummer, but they needed a lead guitarist. This time, the band placed an ad themselves. Ace Frehley saw it and answered, and legend has it that Ace turned up to the audition wearing one red trainer and one orange trainer. He had his tryout, but didn't hear anything for a couple of weeks, and then he was asked to jam again. This time, Pete's wife and Gene's girlfriend were there to have a look at him. Again, it seemed that image was really important in this stage, and he got the gig. The one thing that pissed me off was that the ad in the Village Voice said guitar player wanted for band with recording contract. Well, it turned out there was no recording contract. But I felt the guys were as serious as I was about putting together a theatrical rock group, and I liked the music. We rehearsed constantly, 6 days a week. Ace belonged in the band. He was the missing piece, the missing link. It just all gelled and made sense. Together, the four of them started playing under the name KISS, and at first, they looked like a regular rock band. Bell-bottoms, long hair, not a trace of paint in sight. But even then, they knew they needed something more than just another Zeppelin knockoff. And this is when they started playing around with the makeup idea. And so, KISS reinvented themselves in their own way. Paul Stanley was now the star child, Gene Simmons became the demon, Ace Frehley was the spaceman, and Peter Criss was the catman. And they didn't just chuck on a bit of eyeliner and call it a day, it was full theatrical war paint. The makeup gave them identities, personas, superhero-like alter egos that kids could draw on their schoolbooks. Anyway, the makeup of course worked. I mean, really worked. They leaned hard into the image. The anonymity was part of the mystique. Fans didn't even know what they looked like. For all anyone knew, Gene Simmons could have been your neighbour. In fact, they actually often used to go into the crowd before shows to get a feel for things. And of course, nobody knew that KISS were walking amongst them, in the audience. Well, unless you were a super local early fan. But for the better part of a decade, they kept that marketing thing going strong. Multiple platinum albums, comic books printed with their own blood in the ink. Yeah, that's a true fact, you can look it up. There was lunchboxes, pinball machines, you name it. KISS sold it. They even officially trademarked their look. But by the late 70s and early 80s, the cracks were starting to show, musically and otherwise. The original lineup was falling apart. Peter Criss left in 1980 and Ace followed in 82. Their albums weren't landing the same either. People didn't really know what Kiss were anymore. Were they disco? Were they pop rock? Were they just a parody of themselves? The makeup, which once felt edgy and cool, was now starting to feel dated. By the time they dropped 1982's Creatures of the Night, the band were trying to claw back credibility with heavier riffs, new members, louder drums. But the album didn't do so well commercially. Something had to change. They wanted to prove that their band wasn't just a gimmick. They wanted to remind people that Kiss was deeper than just the theatrics. And so, in what must have been the most nerve-wracking makeup wipe in rock history, they decided to take it all off. On the 18th of September 1983, Kiss appeared on MTV without their makeup for the first time ever.
This is a really big moment. After 10 years together, exclusively here on MTV this evening, we're going to see Kiss without their makeup for the very first time.
Everybody hated it. People didn't want the paint to come off. But you know what? Tough. It had to happen. So, did it work? Well, actually, yeah, it did. Lick It Up ended up going platinum in the US and was their biggest album in years. It outsold the previous album by nearly triple. It was huge in Europe as well. The title track with its ridiculous strutty video became a staple of their live shows, and it marked the beginning of a new era. Big hair, big hooks, and no face paint. They rode the glam metal wave through the rest of the 80s, fitting in with the likes of Bon Jovi, Motley Crue and Def Leppard. And they proved it. They didn't need their makeup to be a great band. That was always just a tool. The whole anonymous band member thing has inspired loads of acts that came after them. Slipknot would be the most obvious one, where the masks are almost the point. It's about anonymity, sure, but it's also about being part of something bigger, like a cult. Or Daft Punk, two faceless robots, unknown but iconic. So it was a huge gamble for Kiss to reveal their identities, but that gamble paid off, for a while at least. Then in the mid-90s, something funny happened. The nostalgia wave started rolling in. People began to remember Kiss with rose-tinted glasses and black and white face paint. The reunion was inevitable. In 1995, they did a surprise unplugged show with Ace and Pete. And in 1996, the original lineup got back together and brought back the whole image. Makeup, costumes, the lot. And they launched a massive world tour. Fans went mental for it. It was like seeing superheroes come out of retirement. You realise then that Kiss without makeup might have been more honest, more stripped down, maybe even more musically credible in some circles. But when they brought the makeup back, they became mythical again. And just like the 80s, it worked. It's a weird tightrope because for Kiss, the image and the music are inseparable. It's not one or the other, it's both. And that's what makes them what they are. Speaking of theatricality, by the way, do you know what the Meatloaf album Bat Out of Hell is actually based on? Because I didn't, and when I found out, it blew my mind. Full video on that over here.